Good afternoon from Virginia Beach, Virginia. It's Saturday, March 27th, 2021. And excluding what's been going on at the ocean front with all the shootings and attacks, we also have some attacks going on within our school system, which you wouldn't think that's where anything like that would happen, but it is. And it's all coming under the auspices of critical race theory. Something that should not ever been implemented, should never been written about. It should not be in the school system, any school system. And so today with us, we have Laura Hughes, a member of the Virginia Beach School Board. She's also a practicing attorney. And I've asked Laura to give us her opinion of exactly what happened last Tuesday at the school board meeting that went on until after 1 o'clock in the morning, and how this whole racial thing, the racial strife that they're trying to create, I think, because in my opinion, if you quit saying racism, there won't be any racism. So we're trying to figure out who is behind all of this and why it's going on, and what are we trying to do to our children, trying to destroy their minds. So Mrs. Hughes, could you just give this listening or viewing audience your opinion exactly what happened, but why? What's the genesis of this?
Well, make no mistake, I stand with Vicky Manning. We had what was deemed an equity policy that we voted on last fall. And prior to voting on it, Vicky actually did ask the most questions about it, and most of the questions were not sufficiently answered. Additionally, we asked questions about curriculum, how would this be taught? And at this point, this may or may not be accurate, but we're being told that it's only being taught to teachers. This is not being taught to students at this time. However, it's still a curriculum. Any sort of training, and we're trying to get our teachers to go in a direction that is going to filter down to the children, whether or not the training reaches them or the teacher's behavior is altered because of the training, it will reach the children. And there was no answer as to what would be included in the curriculum. Because of that, we abstained from the vote. It's hard to say yes or no to something when you don't really have any facts about it. We asked Dr. Parrott, she didn't have a lot of answers. Dr. Spence tends to answer whenever you ask Dr. Parrott a question. But, we were told that there was no real curriculum yet. We were just voting to put it in place so that they could build something. So teachers have been sending clips from the trainings, video clips, and also screenshots of slideshows. And a lot of what we're seeing is that just white people should admit they're racist. That is problematic. First of all, we should not be judging people by the color of their skin. I tend to believe, for the most part, in a colorblind society. I don't believe we should pretend we don't have any differences. In fact, I think we should enjoy the differences. I enjoy learning about other people's culture, their religions, their countries where they come from, their family customs, and their heritage. But I believe our decisions should be colorblind. Anything you get should be on your personal merit. I am who I am. I have a family background, certain things that I do, but either I work for something or I don't work for something. So while you view me as a whole, and my skin color, my eye color, my height, all of those things are part of that. That's part of the package. None of those things should determine whether or not I get a job or a place at a school or anything else like that. It should be based on merit. And I think it's horrendous that we have any kind of program where we're telling teachers that their value is less or greater based on their skin color. And at some point, this is going to filter down to the children, whether the training is direct or whether the teachers are required to act on this training. And we keep being told critical race theory is not being taught, but based on what we're seeing, it actually is. And you can call it whatever you want to call it, but when you're telling people that they should admit that they're racist, that's a problem, and that should not be taught in the schools. And worse yet, we have children, some of whom spent a year not seeing the inside of a classroom. There are some definite learning losses. I cannot believe that this would be considered a priority right now. We have children that have been isolated. We have children that have committed suicide. Even children who are doing better than others, there's still a learning loss in math and reading and science. And this really needs to be our focus right now. And I can't believe that we spent hours with certain school board members who had an obvious, concerted, planned attack on a school board member. And this is what we spent several hours discussing instead of when and how are we going to get our children back to school. And so it was very, very clear that at least 4 board members had written, they had written what they were going to say to attack Miss Manning. It started with Kim Melnick, and then it moved to Sharon Felton, and then it moved to Trinace Riggs, and then it moved to Beverly Anderson. And when Beverly Anderson spoke, it became very clear that they had had a meeting to discuss doing this ahead of time, because part of what Beverly had written said, and I just want to say that I agree with Miss Melnick and Miss Felton and Miss Riggs, and we discussed this with our school board attorney. So why we have meetings going on, and those seem to include the school board attorney in violation of FOIA's open meeting laws, is also beyond me. This is not the work of the school board. Having meetings where, for those who may not understand the FOIA open meeting law, anytime you have more than 2 members of an elected body who meet to discuss the business of a body, that is considered a public meeting. There has to be notice. So if those 4 board members discussed what they were going to say at a meeting and worked on writing this, and that is a FOIA violation, and frankly, it's illegal. And they said that they discussed it with our school board attorney. The second the cameras went off after the meeting, the school board attorney walked over to me and said, I did not advise them about taking action against Miss Manning. My advice was that they should not do this. So they met with the school board attorney about this, and it's problematic, it's shameful, and it's illegal. And what boggles the mind is that all of these people supposedly wanted to implement this so-called equity program because they want diversity, they want inclusion. Yet these same people voted to exclude Ms. Manning and myself from committees for 2 years. And they said in their speeches, which you can watch on, if you go to the school board website, you can see the whole meeting posted on video. If you disagree with them, then this is not the place for you. No one who is truly committed to diversity, inclusion, and equity tries to shut down anyone who disagrees with them. In fact, that's the opposite. So equity, inclusion, and diversity should not be just a talking point to get votes and then you shut down anyone who disagrees with you. It's easy to be a holy man on a mountain, but the real test is whether or not you protect the speech of people you disagree with. If you can't do that, you don't believe in diversity, you don't believe in equity, and you don't believe in inclusion.
Well, Mrs. Hughes, there's an old term that goes back centuries called corruption of blood. And back when it was in effect, if the father or grandfather did something wrong, all the sins carried on down through the generations. They were all guilty. Of course, we did away with that in Europe and then later in the United States in the 1800s. So we don't have the corruption of blood. So how is it under this equity program that anybody could be considered guilty because of less or more melanin in their skin? And how can any child, a 3rd, 4th grader, be considered inferior if they happen to be Caucasian? How could they be associated with with slavery. And keep in mind, as you well know, as you're a historian, that slavery wasn't just limited to the United States. It's been prevalent over the centuries, all over Europe, Africa, everywhere. That's what's been going on. So to try to paint us with this broad stroke that just because you're white, you are responsible for slavery. And I mean, as I've spoken to you about before, the only entity that you can really blame for this is God. And I just don't see why and how. We come from different backgrounds. I think you're from the Middle East, your heritage, mine's from Scotch, English, and Irish, and Romanian. Now, are you responsible for anything that went on in the Middle East? Like, am I responsible for anything that ever happened in Romania? No. So we can teach our children about these things. I think this is what you're trying to do. We learn from the mistakes of the past, and it's sort of like removing all these statues. They are good reminders, because you and I have also spoken about the Holocaust and how we kept Dachau and the other places that killed so many Jews and other people. We keep them preserved as a reminder of what we've done wrong, so we don't do it again.
That was actually very, very important. When the American troops liberated the camps in Germany, our president was adamant that there be a lot of photographs taken, because without photographic evidence, nobody would believe it, because it's unthinkable. And so we have that evidence. And in fact, we have a traveling Holocaust museum. And we do need to never forget, because we need to make sure that never, ever happens again. Of course, it started with separating people, blaming one group of people for all of society's ills, and disarming those people and silencing those people. And we need to make sure that we're aware of all those warning signs, no matter what group it's against. Personally, I am responsible for my own behavior. You are responsible for your own behavior. There are things in our country's past that are not pretty. There are also things in our country's past that are outstanding, that allow for us to live the way we do now. I mean, some of the poorest people in America live better than a good portion of the world. And that is actually something to be proud of. The American charitable spirit, the way we help our neighbors, the way we help other nations. There is no nation more giving than the United States. And that is something to be proud of. The fact that America was willing to outlaw slavery, and it took a war to do it. I mean, obviously that was one of the issues in the Civil War, and it took a war to do that, but we did it, and we healed, and we admitted our mistakes, and we moved forward. And it's important that a nation be able to do that. But if you are, for instance, the child of a mass murderer, we don't tell you that you have no opportunities in life. We don't tell you that you're a bad person because you are the descendant of someone who did a bad thing. You need to be judged on your own merit. And while I do think it is important to understand cultures, because we have many students who come from other countries, it's important to understand that a child from another country whose habits, whose traditions, whose culture is different, may misunderstand something here. And I think it's important to note that. But I think we also need an American culture. We need a school culture. We need to understand that we have people of different skin tones, of different religions, of different socioeconomic groups, and they live in the same neighborhoods, and they ride the same buses, and they attend the same classrooms, and they have the same opportunities. We are hearing that, certain groups are disciplined more often than other groups. I believe the disciplinary standard should be the same across the board. Hitting a student should garner the same punishment from student to student to student. So we need to look at if certain students are being punished more, are those students misbehaving more? And if they are, we need to figure that out. If we have teachers that are in fact racist and punishing students of other races, regardless of what race the teacher or the student is, that needs to be addressed with HR, because that should not be happening. So if that is happening now, we need to fix that, and it needs to be addressed with the specific teachers that are punishing students just in a discriminatory manner.
Well, Mrs. Hughes, as we close this out, what would you like to instill or impart into the minds of the parents of all the children here in Virginia Beach, and especially the teachers, because they are surely being indoctrinated into this program, and this is not a good program to put in anybody's mind, I can tell you that, from what I've read and my interpretation of it. So what can the parents do right now? Who can they call? What do you suggest that they do to try to get this whole thing rescinded and to guarantee that nothing that's been taught to the teachers ever falls downstream to these children in our school system?
Well, it has been my experience now that the majority of teachers, one, want to get back to school, and two, are not in favor of this training. It has also been my experience, based on parent feedback, community feedback, that most parents are not in favor of this. Parents and teachers are going to have to speak up. I've been hearing for years that teachers are afraid to speak up when they disagree with administration, and because they're concerned. Teachers tell me that when they speak up about anything that they see wrong, all of a sudden, teachers who have gotten good evaluations for 20 years are getting bad evaluations, but they can't do it to everyone, and there is strength in numbers. Parents are concerned when they speak up that their children will be treated differently at school, but there is power in numbers. People need to speak up. There is a point where, the horse is out of the barn and you're just not going to be able to stop it anymore. This is it. We need to make sure that our children are back in school full time, absolutely no later than the beginning of next school year. We also need to make sure that we stop this indoctrination in the schools. And parents and students and teachers, we need to stand together, because the truth is our children need to be first. Our children need to not be political pawns. Our children need to not be social experiments. Please reach out. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to Vicky Manning, and you can reach out to Carolyn Weems. You can reach out to any of us on our Facebook pages. Our email addresses are on the school board website. Vicky Manning and I both have campaign and personal pages. You can look it up under our names. Carolyn Weems has a personal Facebook page. All of our email addresses are on the Virginia Beach Public Schools website. You can go to Leadership School Board and click on the email address right under our name, and we are happy to hear from you. We want your feedback. It is very, very important that we look at the will of the public when it comes. These are your children, and we need you to speak up and let us know what your thoughts are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hughes, for once again being a great public servant and being forthright and candid with your views on what's going on in this Virginia Beach school system. And please respond to Mrs. Hughes. I think you'll like to hear her responses to most everything if you're a good conservative parent. We're signing off today, Virginia Beach, Virginia, Saturday, May 27th, 2021.